The episode, Who Killed Helen French from the Streets of San Francisco, stands as one of the most quietly affecting installments of the 1972 series because it combines procedural structure with an almost novelistic sense of melancholy, and what makes it memorable is not simply the central mystery, but the emotional texture that surrounds it, the way the camera lingers on faces, streets, and small domestic spaces to suggest that a crime is never just a puzzle to be solved, but a disruption that radiates outward through a network of relationships and assumptions. And watching it today feels like stepping into a city that exists both as a real location and as a moral landscape, a San Francisco of steep hills, muted interiors, and long shadows where each clue carries a human cost. And from the opening moments, the tone is established with deliberate restraint as the narrative introduces Helen French not through spectacle, but through absence, the discovery that she is gone becoming the quiet center around which the investigation will revolve. And this choice gives the episode a reflective quality that distinguishes it from more sensational crime dramas of its era because it frames the detectives not as action heroes, but as observers moving carefully through a web of half-truths and emotional residue. The first scenes that follow the initial report of Helen's death are structured with a patience that allows the viewer to absorb the rhythms of the investigation as Mike Stone and Steve Keller begin their methodical work, and the episode uses their contrasting temperaments to shape its narrative momentum, with Stone bringing a steadiness born of experience and Keller offering a more questioning energy that mirrors the viewer's curiosity. And what is striking about these early sequences is the way the camera treats ordinary locations as if they hold hidden histories, whether it is a modest apartment with carefully arranged furniture or a quiet office where conversations feel slightly too measured, and each location becomes a character in its own right, contributing to the sense that Helen's life intersected with many others in ways that were not fully understood until after her death. As the detectives begin interviewing people connected to Helen, the episode shifts into a pattern of conversations that gradually reveal the complexity of her relationships, and what stands out is the writing's refusal to simplify anyone into a single role, because each person they speak with carries a mixture of affection, resentment, or guardedness that hints at unresolved tensions. And these interactions are staged with a subtle attention to body language and pauses, the kind of detail that rewards close viewing because it suggests that the truth lies not only in what is said but in what remains unsaid, and the episode excels at using silence as a narrative tool, allowing moments to linger just long enough for the viewer to sense the emotional undercurrents beneath the dialogue. One of the most compelling aspects of the episode is the way it builds its central mystery through accumulation rather than shock, with each new piece of information slightly altering the viewer's perception of Helen and the people around her, and this gradual unfolding creates a sense of intimacy with the investigation, as if the audience is walking alongside the detectives rather than watching from a distance. And the pacing reflects a confidence in the storytelling that feels rare in modern television, where narratives often rush toward climactic revelations, whereas here the emphasis is on observation and inference, on the slow realization that the circumstances of Helen's death are tied to a network of personal decisions and emotional conflicts rather than a single dramatic act. The middle portion of the episode deepens this exploration by focusing on the detectives' interactions with suspects whose motivations are layered and sometimes contradictory. And what I find particularly effective is the way the script allows these characters to exist in moral gray areas, acknowledging that people can care for someone and still contribute to their vulnerability through neglect, secrecy, or self-interest. And this thematic thread gives the episode a resonance that extends beyond the immediate plot, inviting viewers to consider how everyday choices can accumulate into consequences that no one initially intends. And in this sense, the mystery becomes a study of human behavior as much as a search for factual answers. Visually, the episode makes strong use of San Francisco's distinctive geography, with its steep streets and shifting light serving as a metaphor for the investigation's emotional terrain, and there are several scenes where the detectives move through the city in ways that emphasize its scale and texture, reinforcing the idea that a single life can intersect with countless others in a place defined by movement and change. And this visual storytelling complements the narrative's thematic focus on connection and isolation, suggesting that even in a crowded urban environment, people can remain unknowable to one another until a crisis forces their stories into alignment. As the investigation progresses toward its resolution, the episode maintains its commitment to nuance, avoiding the temptation to frame the culprit as a simple villain and instead presenting the outcome as the culmination of pressures and misunderstandings that have been building over time. And this approach lends the final reveal a sense of inevitability rather than surprise, because the audience has been guided through the emotional logic of the story step by step, and when the truth emerges, it feels less like a twist and more like the natural conclusion of a series of interconnected events, and the detective's reactions underscore this tone of subdued reflection, emphasizing the emotional weight of closure rather than any sense of triumph. What makes Who Killed Helen French particularly compelling as a piece of television is the way it balances procedural structure with character-driven storytelling, allowing the investigation to serve as both a narrative engine and a lens through which to explore themes of trust, perception, and the fragility of personal relationships, and the performances contribute significantly to this balance, with the actors portraying Stone and Keller bringing a quiet authenticity to their roles that anchors the episode's more reflective moments, and their dynamic conveys a sense of mentorship and mutual respect that adds depth to the investigative process, making it clear that their work is not only about solving cases, but also about navigating the emotional complexities that accompany each one. Reflecting on the episode from a contemporary perspective, it is striking how effectively it captures a sense of place and time while also addressing themes that remain relevant, such as the difficulty of truly knowing those around us and the ways in which personal choices can ripple outward with unforeseen consequences. And in this regard, it stands as a testament to the strengths of early 1970s television drama, which often relied on character and atmosphere rather than spectacle, and this restraint allows the story to resonate on a more personal level, inviting viewers to engage with the characters' emotional journeys as much as with the mechanics of the mystery. In comparing this episode to other entries in the series, it feels particularly introspective, focusing less on action and more on the psychological dimensions of the investigation, and this focus aligns it with a broader tradition of crime storytelling that emphasizes empathy and observation over confrontation, and for me this approach has always been one of the show's greatest strengths, because it transforms each case into an opportunity to explore the human condition in all its complexity. And watching Who Killed Helen French again reinforces the impression that the series understood something fundamental about the nature of storytelling, that a mystery is not only about uncovering facts, but about understanding the people whose lives are affected by those facts, and that the most compelling narratives are those that allow space for reflection as well as resolution. By the time the episode reaches its final moments, there is a sense of quiet completion that feels earned rather than imposed, and the closing scenes carry a reflective tone that lingers after the credits, inviting viewers to consider not just who is responsible for Helen's death, but what her story reveals about the fragile connections that bind people together. And in this way, the episode achieves a balance between procedural satisfaction and emotional depth that remains rare even today, making it a standout example of how television can combine suspense with thoughtful character exploration. And as a viewer and critic, I find myself returning to it not for its mystery alone, but for its atmosphere, its performances, and its willingness to treat its characters with a degree of empathy that elevates the material beyond the conventions of the genre, ensuring that Who Killed Helen French endures as a quietly powerful entry in the legacy of the streets of San Francisco.